It's the Meista from Brews and Tunes, your favorite heavy metal drinking buddy. I am thrilled today to be chatting with Matt McGachy from Cryptopsy, as well as 3 Mile Scream, and one of my all-time favorite podcasts, Vox&Hops, which pairs metal and beer, which is, of course, a man after my own heart. So very, very excited. Welcome, Matt. Thank you so much for joining me.
Stoked to be with you. It's surprising it took us this long to connect, considering we have somewhat of the same format.
Yeah.
I'm happy that we connected via the Thirsty Thursday gang, the Vox&Hops Thirsty Thursday gang.
Yes. Yeah. And for people that aren't aware of that, I will include a link in the description. So look down, everybody, and check that out. And definitely you'll want to check out Vox&Hops, which we will be talking about, but also the Thursday group is a lot of fun. Very cool to be able to chat with fellow metalheads from around the world, especially fellow metalheads that love craft beer. So we can, chat about beer and whatnot. Speaking of beer, what are you drinking tonight, Matt?
I have two to start with. I don't know how long we're gonna go. I got a Dunkel, or I got it's somewhat of a Brett IPA, but it's not. It's this weird strain of yeast that they found that they thought was Brett, but it actually isn't. So they have this thing from Lupulon. I'm sort of feeling more towards the haze.
Nice.
Lupulon's Biotope. It's from their 100% Brett, which is a play on words in French, which it sounds like it's saying 100% Brett, which is the wild yeast there, but it's sort of the play sans meaning none, so there's no Brett in it, but yet it feels like it's Brett. 6.5% killer can art.
Oh, that's great. That's
really
cool.
Enjoy their can art that they got going on. This is a very young, brand new brewery. They contract brew out of Avant-Garde, which is a killer, awesome brewery. Vox&Hops alumni Sean Zurias had him on the podcast a long time ago, but we should do another one. I think I'm going with this one.
Nice, very cool. I am doing a digital Kool-Aid barrel-aged sour from Heber Valley Brewing, which is a newer brewery here in Utah. They're in Heber City. And this one is, as I said, it's barrel-aged in wine barrels, and it's brewed with pureed raspberry, blackberry, and black currant.
Nice.
It's got a very it's very sour, but it's also got a nice almost Cabernet vibe to it. It's very smooth. It's a 7.1%, I believe. So yeah. So cheers, my friend.
Cheers. Ooh, it's juicy.
Nice.
But it has that weird earthy tang because of the weird yeast. It's the unique yeast. It's not weird. It's special and different. Very cool. This is I tried one about 2-3 weeks ago. It was a little bit too green when I first tried it, meaning the hops were still too present. But this is really nice and smooth. Really, really awesome. And I can't remember what hops are in it, but it's killer.
Nice. Very cool. I wish I could get my hands on some of that. That's one frustration, I think, with I see a lot of cool beers you post there in Canada, especially some of those local breweries to your area in Montreal. Like, God, I would love to try those, but it's especially right now during, a pandemic. It's hard to get your hands on beer from another country.
It's so weird, the obscure and archaic laws surrounding alcohol. They were all basically put into place right after the prohibition. So we're living upon like basically 100-year-old laws that we're all still following. Like, I can't get a beer even here in Montreal delivered to my house from a brewery down the street. Wow. It's illegal. You have to. They've made it a little bit more flexible because of the pandemic. Whereas if you order food, then you can order beer, and that's brand new. So hopefully, I doubt it will. It's, archaic laws are the hardest ones to change, but to get like from Ontario and then to get into the States and back and forth, it's a whole nightmare. And even if you do it properly, it's extremely expensive to go through the proper import agencies. It's insane. And you got to order by the case. I've looked into it because this is my world.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Especially during the pandemic, stuck at home, like, I could use some tasty brews from other regions. But no. Yeah, we have very similar laws here in Utah. They're very tight. Yeah, it's illegal to mail beer here or mail it out because they want their taxes. So there's all sorts of, as you said, very archaic laws here as well. So it can be pretty frustrating when you're a bit of a beer freak like myself and you want to try lots of cool craft beers. Speaking of which, and I'm kind of jumping around here a little bit more than I think I normally would. Well, we're not jumping around yet, but usually I would kind of start with, talking about the music, talking about the band. But since we're on beer, I think it's maybe important to talk about, you recently released 3 collaborative beers for Vox&Hops, the podcast, with local breweries in your area, which sound amazing. And of course, you've highlighted those on your page. Maybe talk a little bit about that. How did that come to fruition in terms of, doing a collaboration with these breweries?
I think when it comes to making collaborations, you have to come with an idea. You can't just show up at a brewery and be like, hey, I'm Matt, Vox&Hops, make me a beer. Each one of the ones that worked, because I pitch a whole bunch of stuff all the time, it comes with an idea, a name, a concept. Everything is like packaged and I give it to them. And that's when most of the time it's successful. For the first one that came out, it's actually the second time it's come out. It's a new batch, the Vox and Overhops from Overhop Canada. They are a killer brewery, which is originally from Brazil, that have relocated up here into, it's like a second brewery. There's the Brazil version and now the Canadian version. Wonderful humans that work there. So I hit them up for my 2-year anniversary, hoping to get a collab with them. I love hazy IPAs, so I hit them up. I said, and when I started the podcast and I first fell in love with Overhop Canada, I was like, one day I'm going to do a beer and I'm going to call it Vox and Overhops. And that's a true story. The podcast was about 6 months old and I put this thought into the universe, pitched them the name. It worked. It came out. It was amazing. It sold out super quick last November. They decided to bring it back this spring. Super stoked about that. It's just as delicious. They like doubled the batch and it's just about all gone again. So I'm hearing whispers of it coming in and becoming basically a part of their flagship series, which would make me extremely happy. So
that's very exciting.
And the hops that went into it, we each picked one. The brewer picked one, Gabriel, Patty, the owner, picked one, and I picked my Citra. It's one of those things that it was so easy, it just worked. For Brewski, that was a different one. They do these fruited sours called brew juices. So I had them on the podcast, and we've been talking about doing a collab basically from November until March, when I finally had them on the podcast, just pitching ideas, but it wasn't sticking. And then all of a sudden I had this idea, or, just like the late night after a few beers ideas that come to me, calling the beer Brutal Juice, but you got to say it right, Brutal Juice, so to take they do these imperial versions, and a fruited sour is basically like a sour base that they add a whole bunch of fruit puree to. Typically they come in around 5-6%, but every once in a while they do an imperial one. So I pitched them the idea of doing Brutal Juice, and I drink brew juices as a hangover cure, because it's fruity, it's light, there's fruit puree in it, so it makes myself feel like I'm doing something good for myself and getting that hair of the dog at the same time. So I told them that, but at the same time, I also, when I'm hungover, I drink a lot of coffee. So I said, let's just put it all together and let's do Brutal Juice, the imperial. Let's like hit up like 8.5-9%, and let's put coffee in it. And they were like, hell yes. And then Zach, who was one of the brewers, and Derek, who's the main recipe maker, mad scientist of Brewski, we all came up together. Zach pitched, what if we did like a breakfast in a can? So maple syrup, the oats, the little fruits, and the coffee. And then I included a local coffee roaster that I've been trying to work with forever, who I love, called Zab Coffee. So we got their coffee in it. It was amazing. And they put the black currants. They wanted to make it basically as black as possible to fit the metal aesthetic. It ended up looking like blood. So it was like black currants, black raspberries, blackberries, and the dark maple syrup with the black coffee, 8.5%. It ended up being, it was deliciously, dangerously delicious.
Nice.
I was there for the whole brewing, the canning, the can art turned out super sick. That was another one that just worked.
That can is amazing.
And then the other one that came out, which was Black IPA, which I actually still have some. I almost drank one tonight. It was basically, I saw the can art and I was like, I can definitely jump in on that. And that's how that happened. So basically it's black. Can I go get it with that?
Oh yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah, I think it makes sense for the story.
Cool.
So basically they sent me a picture of this.
Oh,
and I was like, I can definitely work with this and sell these beers. So
yeah. Oh yeah.
I warned them. I was like, they like to sue people. And I went there and we shot like a video to promote once it came out. And I was like, do not say the band's name. But it's cool. And it's a 7% black IPA. It was so damn roasty and malty that he had to add a bunch of pineapple puree to lighten it up and juicy it up to let the hops express themselves a bit more. It's delicious. Really very happy with that as well. So collabs are I love collabs. My brain isn't wrapped around collabs all the time. I like to collaborate with breweries. I like to give them ideas. I'm not a brewer. I like craft beer. I drink craft beer. But to come up with an idea that will hit the pulse of what's happening in the scene, at least here in Montreal, and have it work 3 times in a row, I'm very excited about it.
Yeah, that's very cool. I mean, and you obviously have a very keen eye and a very keen taste for craft beer and for the aesthetic in terms of, you know, combining the metal imagery with the beer, which is important because, I mean, you know, as we know, metalheads can be pretty picky about stuff.
It's all about the brand, right? Like, and that's not metal, which is funny because that's extremely not metal to be so brand conscious and understand what Vox&Hops' brand is. We're all about metal and craft beer, but it has to be like this one. It was, you know, it's a simple aesthetic to it. The Vox&Hops has more of a scary skull thing, but it's not evil metal. It's not the Cannibal Corpse-esque gore and guts. It can still sit on a grocery store shelf and not offend anyone, but it still has the aesthetic of metal. Yeah,
definitely. Well, since we're on the subject of beer and collaboration, let's talk about an incredibly exciting project that has been going on for some time that you are currently working and is coming out very, very soon in both Canada and the United States, a massive collaboration piece, which you're calling Brutal North America. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure.
I'm really excited about this.
So Brutal North America is all about me curating unique band collabs, but not just any bands. Past guests of the podcast, the Vox&Hops alumni, I have teamed them up with metal breweries from across the States and Canada. We have 22 collabs dropping the week of June 21st to the 25th. Each beer is in a super sick Brutal North America label with the band and brewery logos flipping for every collab. Every beer is different. Every beer has been curated really like to the interests of the artist and the breweries. Everybody was there at brew day, canning day. It's a really hands-on experience and I'm so excited about it. It's all coming. I've been working on this since the end of February, doing a bunch of meetings, getting everything going, encouraging everyone to be at brew days to get their footage because we're doing mini documentaries for each collab. Oh, wow. That will be spanning about 90 seconds to 6 minutes in total, depending on the exclusive content which the artists are providing. So there's people that have given us playthroughs. For the Cryptopsy one, I'm doing a super sick interview to talk about the song creation of the song that we are making. I'll give you a tidbit of it. It's Cryptopsy's collab is called Cold Haze Warm Blood,
Nice.
taken from the classic Cold Hate Warm Blood song, and it's a hazy New England IPA with blood orange. I'm very excited about it.
Oh, very cool.
That's it, and all these mini docs are basically just to showcase what the brewery's got going on now, what the band is up to, and I just gave them free reign to do whatever they want. So huge shout out to my video content director, Chris Kells, the bassist of The Agonist, who joined the team to help me make all of these mini docs, because I had the idea and I didn't know how to do it. I was going to do it, but Chris Kells definitely knows what he's doing and is there to save me and make this happen. So shout out to Chris.
Very cool. Yeah. Very cool. Badass bass player as well.
Indeed.
Great band.
I've known him for over 20 years.
Nice. That's really exciting news. My face actually hurts. I'm smiling so hard. I'm so excited for this. This is amazing. This is so cool. And as you said 22 collaborations, correct?
That's correct.
Incredible.
Eight from Quebec, a few others from Canada, and then 10 throughout the States. We got collabs for Shadow of Intent, Unleash the Archers. We got Cryptopsy, a Curian, Brand of Sacrifice, Striker, Battlecross. Wow. It's been a long time we haven't heard that name, and I got Battlecross back to do something together. The Atlas Moth, just so many really, really cool, amazing bands. Everyone's just working together. You know, basically like 250 people all working together to collaborate to create something unique. Spreading the motto of Vox&Hops, which is life, metal, and craft beer. It's unbelievable. I'm so excited.
That's amazing. That is, I'm getting teary. This is so cool. This is amazing.
So I hope everyone can get these beers.
Yeah.
But, I've also had like sponsors that have jumped onto the tour, which is incredible. I never would have thought that this would happen. So Indie Merch Stores jumped on as a sponsor. Cool. Yakima Chief Hops have supplied hops for each of the brews to help sponsor the collab project. And Heartbeat Hot Sauce has actually rebranded their Scorpion sauce with a Brew North America label. And the first so many clients that show up at the brewery to pick up a Brew North America collab will leave with a full-size rebranded Scorpion hot sauce, which is the hottest sauce that they have, but it's still manageable and totally delicious because Heartbeat Hot Sauce only does those balanced sauces. It's not like those ones that just want to make you die. So you can still enjoy the beer that you're going to taste.
Nice. That's so cool. That's such an incredible idea. How long have you been working on this?
In the end of February is really when I started the wheels in motion. At first, it really stemmed from a project where I wanted to do a series of collabs where it's a band on tour and the different stages of the band. So like at the beginning of the tour, like the can art would be like this, they're all happy in the van, and then like later on they're like getting more and more taut. You know what I mean? Like that was I wanted to have like 5 series of beers like that. And then the person I was riffing with to come up with the idea was like, what if we like did it with other breweries and it moved around? And I was like, oh, this is a good idea. And then it evolved and it kept evolving. And then the idea of like, let's do a live stream, that quickly went aside. And then let's include bands and yeah. So it just snowballed into me. And initially I wanted 10. I was aiming for 10. And everyone just kept saying yes. So I just kept going. And
that's great. That's amazing. That's
now we're close to it happening, and I just can't wait to see everyone tasting these beers and enjoying everyone's work that's went into it.
Yeah, that's great. I'm really hoping that some of these will be available in my area, or I may have to do some finagling to get some of this stuff. Might have to go on some road trips, or I'll do what I can to. Yeah, there's definitely, and it sounds like I mean, not only do you have different styles, different subgenres of metal, it sounds like they're probably different types of beers, different styles of beers.
All different. Everything is different. There's fruited sours, there's IPAs, there's huge heavy stouts, pastry stouts, there's crushable lagers. I'm seeing a lot of lagers, which is really cool.
Oh, nice.
The Fuming Mouth has like a slightly like smoked one with Bone Up Brewing. I'm very excited about that. There's a lime lager going on with New Level Brewing and Striker. It's there's the sky's the limit with what you can do with beer nowadays. So as long as everyone's enjoying it, there's a Kolsch coming out from Widowmaker, Gilded Skull, and Summoner. It's very exciting.
Very cool. That's very exciting. I love it. That's cool. That's an amazing idea. So speaking of your Vox and Hops and kind of where this came from, let's talk a little bit about Vox and Hops and what that is, and for people that aren't aware of it. It's an amazing podcast that you put together. You've been going for 2.5 years now, where you sit down with various musicians and talk about music, talk about their experiences. You talk about beer, if they're privy. And I think what's very cool about it and very interesting about it, as opposed to say me talking with musicians, is you yourself are a musician. So there's something a little, there's that dynamic where you've been where they've been, you understand where they're coming from, especially with the touring, especially with the shows, the studio work. There's an understanding there, but it's always very genuine and very honest, which is what I love about it. And it's very conversational. It's not, what's your favorite color? What's your favorite this? It's very conversational and as I said, very honest and open. So when did you start thinking about creating a podcast originally?
I had taken a year off from working. I'm actually an early childhood educator when I'm on the road screaming with Cryptopsy. So I took a year off with my then 2-year-old daughter. Here in Canada, it gets dark very, very early in the winter, and my wife would come home a bit later. So there was like a 3-hour gap when I had to entertain her, because we don't watch TV with our kids, and we try not to do as much screens as the least amount of screens as possible. So cool. I listened to a lot of music. I basically went back and revisited like my whole youth's loves, and that's how I rediscovered and fell back into the love of new metal, which is shameful to say, but I'm not ashamed. I'm a new metal head, and I like it, and I'm happy that it's coming back.
Nice.
But and then basically I listened to everything. So I was like, okay, I was on the Jasta show. Me and Flo were interviewed. Let's listen to the Jasta show. Ollie, my bassist, loves it. Let's do it. So I put on an episode, listened to another episode. I was like, this is really cool. I'll listen to him. Because at that point he was like offering 10 episodes for free and you had to pay. So I was like, let's listen to someone else's, because I've listened to all the ones that I wanted to listen to here. So I was like, the X-Men with Doc Coyle. I know Doc from back in the day. I was like, let's check this out. Loved it. And then I just kept going down the rabbit hole, more and more podcasts, off camera with Sam Jones really hooked me. What the Fuck with Mark Maron. Really enjoy that. So really just got into like this world of podcasts. Everyone except for Joe Rogan, which is funny. I've actually never listened to. I probably should, because he's the king, but but as people listening and being a self-sufficient and making money from a podcast point of view. So I went out to dinner with my wife, who has always been very supportive and is now the producer of Vox and Hops, and she, through a discussion, we built basically the whole premise for Vox and Hops. The name was born that day, and that was like early April, and then I conducted my first interviews at early August of that same year. So this is 2018, and I knew what I wanted to do. I always was that guy on tour that would ask questions and listen and want to go a little bit deeper, which is hard to do on a tour bus setting when there's partying, but I would still manage to find that guy, because on a tour bus, typically in Europe too, there's these you're like sitting 4 in this sectional type thing. So the person right next to you, like they're shoulder to shoulder, you can have a deep conversation with. So I did that with a lot of musicians like Alex Bent and Travis from Cattle Decapitation, and nice. Just going deep. So this is where it all came from. And then I love craft beer, so I'm like, let's put both together. It's basically the Jerry Seinfeld, comedians in cars getting coffee, Vox&Hops was going to be. This was my initial elevator pitch. It's the comedians in cars getting coffee, except it's musicians in bars drinking craft beer. That was my initial elevator pitch.
Cool.
So I conducted 10 interviews and recorded everything before I launched, which was at the end of October 2018. And I've been running strong since then. I think I'm releasing tomorrow 267 tomorrow.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, you're pushing 300 in 2 years. That's incredible. That's really cool. And obviously, you know, with this past year of god awfulness, yeah, you had, well, you're a pretty busy guy, but you had, I don't want to put words in your mouth, maybe a little extra time to do interviews. I don't know, but you still, I mean, that's a lot. You pumped out a lot of interviews, and the cool thing,
I think when the pandemic hit, I was at 120.
Okay. So you've,
in about 13, 15 months span, I did about 120. So I was still rolling pretty hot. Yeah. But the pandemic really gave me the opportunity to speak to anyone. Before, I was only going to be face-to-face. Vox&Hops would have never, ever been a remote thing. I didn't think the connection would be there. Vox&Hops was meant to be on the tour bus, backstage, in a small bar, two friends having a conversation. So it was either me seeing someone downtown Montreal when they came through, which I did a ton of interviews that way. A tour package would come through and I would just go one by one and take
okay, cool.
the artists and do like 3-4 interviews in a night with basically the whole tour package, you know, working my way backwards through the bill, you know.
Nice.
It's basically how it was. It's true. So it was like when the headliners were sound checking, I would take the openers and vice versa. Once the show started, I had the headliners.
Oh, okay, nice.
Yeah. So it was I've done that a bunch of times. And then the pandemic hit and I was like, okay, everyone's home.
Yeah.
I can talk to anyone. And I made a list in my phone. It's probably still there of who I want to talk to. I should check to see how many people I got. But yeah, and I just didn't stop. And I started releasing 3 episodes a week during the pandemic because I just had so much content and just kept going.
Yeah, and it's been amazing. It's been great. It's been very cool. And you've had, you know, both some really big names, which are always great to see, but also, especially for me, you know, here in the States, you do a lot of interviews with local, you know, Canadian bands that I've never even heard of. And it's fascinating. It's turned me on to a lot of music. And again, as I mentioned earlier, it's great because it's very honest, it's very genuine, it's very interesting. And you ask amazing questions. It's really fun to watch. I watched, well, one of the, I guess it's more recent that, you know, really was fascinating and, you know, was Corpse Grinder, was Fisher, who I think you even mentioned in that show was one of your, you know, kind of a white whale, you know, kind of a unicorn.
Definitely. And I had toured with him too. So there was always you know, but I toured with him and I was nervous around him still. I remember he came on we were sharing a bus with Obituary. And he came on one night to party, and he like sat next to me, stood next to me, and I started doing exactly what I do, talking about, you know, that song there where, how do you do that? He was cool, he answered, but just shy around certain artists. But at least, like, I guess when I'm conducting an interview, I'm very much in control and I know where I'm going with an interview. But that interview in particular was very odd because I did it at 4 p.m., which I never do. I only do interviews at 2 p.m. normally because I have like 2 young kids, and a bit earlier in the afternoon is a bit better than later because they're cranky for supper.
Right.
And sitting right here, I do everything right here. There's a window over there and I have it open like I do now, and it's fine at night. But at that particular time, there was this ray of light that just, and if you watch them, you can see me just keep sort of moving over so that I can, because I didn't want to stop him because I had a 20-minute interview with Corpse Grinder.
Right.
Which, if you've ever listened to Corpse Grinder talk about anything, he is nothing but, you know, long-winded about every single subject. So I asked, I think, 2 questions that interview, and then wrapped it up and said, okay, I'm good. I could have gone forever with you. And he was like, oh, dude, no, I actually canceled the next one. We could have kept going. And I was, you should have told me.
Oh, yeah, wow.
I was like, well, we'll hook up again. So
yeah, that was an amazing interview.
He was so open about
he was going through. It was really cool. It was very compelling. Yeah, I loved it. And it's, you know, and you've interviewed Brittany slays several times now.
3 times now. Yeah.
Yeah, and she's an amazing interview always. Just such a delight to listen to. She's an amazing singer, obviously, amazing vocalist, but just a really good person.
Frontman, just one of the best frontmen I've ever seen.
Yeah, just that power. And then, when you talk to her, she's incredibly humble, funny, honest. Yeah, very smart. Yeah, really fun to talk to. I loved your interview with Sebastian Bach.
That was a wild one. See, that's one of those situations like Zoom, you know these situations where you launch the meeting, and there's times that I launch the meeting and I sit here by myself because nobody joins. So that was one of those situations. So I launched the meeting at 8:30, typical recording time for me, because the kids are asleep. And when that happens, I just start doing work, because there's always work to be done when you have a podcast. So I was just started doing the work that had to be done after that interview. And about 25 minutes after he was supposed to be there, and I was like, well, I'm going to drink, this beer that I was going to drink with Sebastian on the couch, because I'll typically wait 30 minutes. 25 minutes, like 8:55, boom, there he is. And he was on fire. He was one of the funniest interviews I've done. I laughed the whole time. He sang, and hilarious.
Yeah, he was great. That was very cool. And another one that really stood out for me was which I thought was a really cool idea as well. And I don't know, I don't know how hard it was to put together, but the 2-year anniversary where you had a round table with all of the past singers and yourself of Cryptopsy, which, I mean, I don't know what the relationship is at all. That seems very brave.
We'd never been in a room all together. And we still haven't, because we did it virtually like this, right? Yeah. So it was amazing, and we're all fans of each other. So it was truly amazing. I think the only thing because I had Lord Worm as my 1-year anniversary guest, and he was like unbelievable, perfect guest. It was live at a little bar that I love here called Turbo House. There was like 60 people. It was sold out. It was amazing. And I had set the chairs up to connect with him, like face to face with the crowd here, and he showed up early, and I'm like showing him, this is where we're going to do the interview. And he gets up on the stage and turns the chair towards the audience. And I'm like, okay, we're in for a show. So I called him and I asked him for the 2-year anniversary. I don't want to be that guy that just calls Lord Worm whenever I need stuff for the podcast. I don't like being a person like that. So and I rarely get nervous when I talk to people, but I always get super nervous before calling Lord Worm for some reason. It's always like a mental psych up, like, okay, I'm gonna call Lord Worm. He's gonna say yes because he's super nice, right? So call him, he says yes, it's cool. But he didn't understand that it was gonna be virtual for the 2-year anniversary. So he was a bit taken aback by the technological side of it. He's very not, has no computer, has no smartphone.
Oh, wow.
He's not technologically interested in it. It's not that he can't do it, it's that he just doesn't care. He's very happy with whatever he has, and that's enough for him. So I think it would have been much more if it was all of us in a room together. Like, I cut out so much. It was hard to edit that many voices. We had Bradley Zorgdregger of Banger TV as a moderator so that I could be a part of the discussion as well, which I was very happy to get him to do that, because it was super interesting. It was really, really fun, but a live situation like that would have been amazing.
Yeah, it was fascinating. I think anybody that's especially a fan of Cryptopsy, but I think just a fan of music, it's fascinating to listen to. It's really interesting to hear vocalists talk about other vocalists that are right there, and talk about, and I think especially from you as the singer of Cryptopsy now, and talking about learning the vocal patterns of those singers in the past. And
we all went through the same struggles.
Yeah. And I mean,
how the hell did Lord Worm do it?
Yeah. Well, I remember, I think one of the funnier parts is when you say, you ask him, like, did you actually sing every word? Because you didn't, right? And he's like, no, I did. God damn.
I still don't believe him. I don't believe him.
Yeah. And for those that may not know Cryptopsy, I mean, brutal death metal band, brutal vocals, intense vocals, in the, I'd say in the style of like Corpse Grinder, that really brutal, kind of early, well, and current brutal death metal.
I think Lord Worm, had they keep going in that direction, he would have been the Canadian Chris Barnes. Basically, he was more unhinged. His vocals were more wild, but he's also growing up in a scene with Sylvain Hood of Cataclysm, the early Cataclysm, which was just a maniacal vocalist. They were basically growing up in the scene together. Everything was influencing everything.
Yeah. Well, so I think that's a good transition. How did you come into this? What was the catalyst for young Matt McGachy to become a death metal vocalist?
I never wanted to be. I wanted to be. I grew up like singing in the car with my dad. My dad was a metalhead, but more of like a mainstream metalhead, a Black Album Metallica fan. He had the other ones, but I think he initially got hooked with the Black Album and then worked his way backwards.
Okay, so more the melodic.
Listening, Journey, singing in the car with my dad, Bon Jovi, the Slippery When Wet album. That was something that played a lot
Yes.
in my youth. And just from there, I always wanted to be a singer. I always wanted to sing. There's videos of me in cowboy boots and underwear singing some country song because that my aunt had showed me, because she was big into country, still is big into country. And just always wanted to be a singer, just fell into being a death metal head. So I started playing in bands. I had no idea how to sing. I could sort of sing, but I wasn't trained at all. My aunt, who showed me the country music, paid to get me singing lessons. And that's when I basically fell into 3 Mile Scream, which was my first Montreal-based band. From 3 Mile Scream, working with 3 Mile Scream when we recorded with Chris Donaldson, who is Cryptopsy's guitarist and producer. Chris showed off his mixes to the band one day on a trip out on the road, heading to Toronto, and Flo was like, "Who's this singer?" He had this idea of switching up Cryptopsy's sound, and I seemed to fit his idea. So that's how I ended up in Cryptopsy.
I read, and maybe this is not true, I'm curious, I wanted to ask you this, and I had read somewhere several years ago, I believe, that Flo had seen you playing, I think, in a club, and he was really drunk, and that's when he initially offered you the job. Is that?
No. He came up to me and he said one sentence: "You make me think." He was a little bit. He had enjoyed a few too many beers that night, which he really doesn't do that much anymore. He's extremely calm and wise, and as the years have gone by, unlike the rest of Cryptopsy.
And calm, but a furious fucking drummer. I mean,
absolutely.
Holy shit. I love.
He's like a fine wine, just getting better with age.
Oh God, watching that dude play is amazing. That man is a monster. It's really, and I think, and you play off of each other really, really well. In fact, I was admiring your T-shirt, your Bakken. Is that the 2015? Is that the?
Yeah, that's the one that's on the net there.
Okay, yeah, that show. Whew, man, watching that. Well, one, I think, I mean, the drumming isn't. I mean, the band is so tight, and you guys are you gel so well on stage. It's really a joy to watch. The other thing that really struck me in watching that performance was the opening, and I don't know how you did not break your neck.
It was pure adrenaline, because we almost missed that gig. We were so close to missing it. We seriously got there like 10-15 minutes before our set time. There was like dudes on like mopeds, 4-wheelers, taking us to the stage straight from the interstate. It was insane. We were so late. The drive we had to do was just incredible, and it was just about impossible to make it, but we made it. And we showed up, and Flo's has a very intricate kit set up, and somehow they had done it. There was only a few minor tweaks, And then if you look at that said, like, I'm looking down at my mic and I'm like, I'm sponsored by Sennheiser. This is okay. But it was, that was pure adrenaline. That's exactly what the beginning of that set was, and we made it.
Yeah.
We're playing Vakken finally.
That's an amazing set. And the cool thing is it's in its entirety. I think Vox and TV posted it, correct? So if anybody wants to check that out, it's on, Vox and TV, YouTube. It's an amazing set. It's, probably 30 minutes long or thereabouts. Really incredible. I mean, unfortunately, I've never actually seen you live, but I've, just, pulling up videos. It's incredible. You guys are just amazing. And it seems, as I said, there seems to be it's a very cohesive team on stage. You're very tight. It's really fun to watch, but that's funny because I've heard you talk before in other interviews about how sometimes it all kind of just comes together to some degree where, you record separately or you have in the past, and then
that happens a lot. Where we don't even write the songs together. We all write our parts separately. We all track with Chris, but it's all like building something up, as opposed to back in the day when Cryptopsy was doing None So Vile and Whisper, and then You'll Beg, Once Was Not, basically everything except for what I've been a part of. They used to jam and write in the jam room, but Donaldson doesn't like it that way. Donaldson writes in the studio. That's how his brain operates. That's what he likes to do, which is a big battle back in the day with Flo to find a balance of how to make this work. But we figured out a way. So.
And it sounds like it's a very collaborative effort in terms of writing.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Chris will come with some riffs, or Flo will hum some stuff out. A lot of the times Chris has to make himself suffer. He's extremely judgmental on himself. It took him many years to accept being Cryptopsy's guitarist because he was a fan growing up. So replacing John Levasseur was so big for him, he felt like an imposter.
Interesting.
For many, many years. So the only ways that he could write, and he's an extremely harsh critic, Chris, especially upon himself, was to get extremely drunk.
Really?
So the Tome 1, Tome 2, and most of we have a new record coming, was written extremely intoxicated. So
interesting.
And then he wakes up the next day and then he goes, yeah, it's good. Wow. Or sometimes it's like, no, this doesn't work.
Interesting. Yeah, I was gonna say so that was, trying to get my years straight, 2018 was when Tome 1 and Tome 2 were released.
Tome 2 came out in 2018. Tome 1 came out in 2015.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Sorry. I think I bought them together.
Probably from Hammerheart. That's why Hammerheart re-released them.
Yeah,
together. That's probably why.
So I think that was 2018, maybe even 2019. Mm-hmm. Can't remember. I guess it doesn't matter. But yeah, so for those that don't know, the Books of Suffering, Tomes 1, Tomes 2, 2 EPs, basically makes up an entire album, which is phenomenal. And I think some of the best Cryptopsy work historically, in my opinion. I mean, I love the early stuff.
Thank you.
But I think that, especially lyrically and vocally, it's profound, in my opinion. It's really deep. It's and so for people that don't know, it's about suffering. And the cool thing, well, I should let you explain.
I'm like, no, he's asking me. I'm like, do I remember what my concepts?
Well, I mean, the first.
Oh yes, now I remember. Yes, it's the first one's of people who cause suffering.
Yeah,
that's what it is. Yeah. So I covered a bunch of strange, obscure stories of people that have done horrible things to other people. Very original for a death metal concept, right? But initially, and we still have this in mind, the Book of Suffering is supposed to be 3 tomes. So I wanted to find a concept that could spread over 3 tomes, and I can have enough to say about everything while keeping it original for myself. So I wanted to find something with suffering, and how could you play with suffering? So the first one's people who have caused suffering, so all the weird stuff. And then the second EP is about people who have escaped suffering. That one was a bit more interesting to go and try to find my concepts. And then the last tome is supposed to be about people who have witnessed suffering. So they were not the people suffering, they didn't cause it, but they were there and they witnessed it happening. So that will happen eventually, but we are now knee deep in a new record.
Cool.
With a totally different concept that I came up with before the pandemic, and the pandemic has just made it seem so much more impactful It's really like a perfect timing of everything that's happening in the world. It's
Yeah.
not about the pandemic at all, because I don't think the world needs any more pandemic themed records.
Right.
But it has to do with the internet and obsession and the negative impacts of a beautiful tool.
Oh, nice. That's wonderful news to hear that there's a new album in the works. Do you have a timeline?
No,
early to say
the
at this point?
pandemic really slowed us down, and we had just the week that everything shut down, we were writing the new record. We signed a new record deal. We have been independent since 2012, and we're finally back on the label.
Cool.
They were sort of just gave us the space that we needed. They were probably happy too that we weren't pushing, because it's a pandemic. So it's finished, it's written. Now we have to get in the studio and record it. Chris being extremely booked and a very popular, in-demand producer, we need to wait until there's time in the studio, but we have booked some dates. So timeline, best case scenario, 2023,
Oh, wow.
or 2022 late, depending on how the label wants to get this out. But
Well, and hopefully we'll be at a point where you guys are able to tour.
I think that's the best plan too, because we've had our arguments, discussions about what would we do if it was ready. Would we release it? Would we sit on it? Would we, can we put out an album? Is it worth it? It's always a question that I ask in the interviews: is pandemic release.
Yeah.
How did you cope with this? What was the internal band discussions? Who was for it? Who was against it? Did the label want to push it? That's always a question that I like to ask bands. So.
And I guess it depends somewhat on the process and where the band is with it, in the production of the album, how far along they are, down the road. And I mean, there's
some people have like albums that they've been sitting on for 2 years.
Yeah,
it's finally coming out, and then a pandemic hits, and you have to wait. I would freak out. It's like your ex-girlfriend that's sitting there while you're writing the new girlfriend. you got to force yourself to love the ex-girlfriend when you can finally go out and play it. That must be very difficult.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good analogy. I like that. Yeah, I mean, it's been crazy, and it's interesting. Yeah, there are bands that have been producing a lot of stuff, and it's interesting too to see. I mean, the writing process. I mean, a lot of people are writing a lot, and musicians, what they're doing with their time, if not being able to tour, because I mean, let's face it, that's the lifeblood of a modern, especially a metal band, is touring, and especially underground extreme metal. I would imagine that's really where the money comes from in a lot of ways, is the touring rather than albums, because a lot of people download. I prefer physical albums myself because I'm old. In fact, if people haven't seen this wonderful,
yeah, that's super nice thing.
So I picked this up a while back, and it was released originally in 2012, but 2019 Record Store Day re-release in a lovely book form. Fantastic album, and it's a great, if you're not familiar, for listeners, if you're not familiar with Cryptopsy, or only somewhat, and you're interested, this is a really cool place to start, because it spans the entire history of the band up until 2012
with some live stuff, and the recordings. Those 3 tracks that we did for that we've never played them live. It was like a weird point of the band. Yuri Remo from Unhuman was doing a lot of the guitar work on that, so there's a lot of like None So Vile worship going on some of the tracks, and definitely cool. And he totally, I was, the Unspoken King, we had the backlash, the shit, and this was the next release basically. So I went to his house, and he was like, he recorded all the vocal patterns. He was like, you should do something like this. This would be more Cryptopsy-esque. So I totally did that, and I wrote lyrics to those patterns, which is something I've never done again. But that really helped me transition to the self-titled when I felt more confident that I could be a Cryptopsy vocalist, and then the Book of Suffering, where I definitely feel more confident.
Nice. Yeah, there was, I don't know if you want to go here, but yeah, that was interesting and frustrating in my opinion. But yeah, there was some backlash, I think, initially when you first joined the band. It was rock and roll. It was death threats and how dare you. We handled it wrong. I've spoken about it
at length in other interviews that we mishandled our media response to what was going on, and now just thinking back now, hypothetically, the label could have, given us some more insight on how the response should have been handled. Maybe, I don't know, maybe that's not a label's job. But if I ran a label, I would definitely offer some advice of how a band should respond. Going on Summer Slaughter and opening up with a track making fun of everyone that doesn't like your new record was not the best idea, but it was really funny at the time, and stupid, not a good idea, slap in the face, but we really laughed when we came up with that idea. It was.
I think that's hysterical. That's great. Yeah, maybe not the best PR move, but it's still funny as hell.
And all the bands on Summer Slaughter that heard that for the first time could not believe it. It was it was funny. But yeah, we know. But Cryptopsy really, the Unspoken King. I listened to it the other day actually. There's some interesting songs. It's not Cryptopsy, but it's interesting. I think especially where the climate is now of extreme metal, where there's a lot of clean vocals, a lot of strange clean vocals. I think that had we pulled out something like that nowadays, it would be more accepted. But to go from Lord Worm being back to having clean vocals sung rather clean, not even like harshly clean, with this new face, it really pushed people away. So, and then we handled it horribly.
Well,
I'm switching gears to my black IPA.
Oh, nice, very cool. Yeah, I'm getting close. I'll be switching to a juicy IPA myself here in a minute. One thing I wanted to ask you, and I know you've talked about this before in other interviews, but I found it very interesting. And I think you spoke about this recently in an interview I read. Will you explain the crisp bark?
It happened just so naturally it's actually my new favorite go-to voice. I love it. It's my natural scream voice that I, for some reason, never used with Cryptopsy. I was just walking back into, out of the drum room where Chris records my vocals, into the console to listen with the guys, as opposed to on the headphones. And as I was going back out, I just let out I would do it, but the kids are sleeping, right behind me. Bark voice, and he was like, do that on the next take. Just use that voice, and it stuck. And it's this new voice that's become my Lord Worm voice. Whenever I'm on tour doing a Lord Worm track, I use my Chris Bark voice, which sounds like a bark, and it's sort of Chris Barnesy, but it's totally not Chris Barnes.
Nice, I love it.
So this is killer. This is a great Microbrasserie Luxbrun, the black IPA. Really cool, the black bear, of course. Yeah.
Nice.
With the pineapple puree.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's a fascinating. I'm sure I've had many black IPAs, which I love, and I wish there were. It's funny because, God, it's probably been at least 10 years ago in the US, in the States, black IPAs were kind of all the rage, and then it just gone. It was gone.
The New England IPA came in
just killed everyone. Sweet and fruity. And there's a few breweries that still make it. It's funny that you did the this black IPA with the Metallica look. There's a brewery here locally in Utah, in Salt Lake City. They did a black IPA that's called the Black Album. It doesn't use the font, but it is called it's a black can, and it's called the Black Album, and which was cool. And then there's a local brewery here where I live in Ogden that does a black IPA called Buffalo Soldier, which is phenomenal. It's perfect. It's just a perfect, just that it's got a nice maltiness to it. It's got a bite to it. It's bitter, but doesn't punch you in the throat. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful beer. I kind of miss, I miss those black IPAs. They're hard to find now, at least where I am. It's not as easy.
They're coming back. There's a few key breweries that just brew everything well. This one being one of them, Psyche and Bottle. They do everything well, everything.
Nice.
And they have a killer black IPA. This is their Dunkel.
Also amazing. Montreal brewery?
No, it's outside. It's in Aylmer, Aylmer, which is near Ottawa, near
Okay.
Gatineau. Yeah, I hope I'm saying that name right.
Nice.
Aylmer.
Did you grow up in Montreal?
Yes, just outside of Montreal in a small city called Deux Montagnes. But when I grew up, it was Two Mountains because there was far more English people there.
Oh, interesting.
And it's a tiny town. Me and Chris Kells from the Agonist grew up basically there.
Oh, okay.
There's the Galunatics. I don't know if it's a bigger Quebec-based band. Also grew up from Two Mountains. Lots of musicians came from Two Mountains, which is very interesting.
Yeah. What was the metal scene like there?
There was none. No, it was so small. Like I basically played with people in high school, but it wasn't metal. I was like a new metal child, and I had to find a band. Like the first band I was in, I covered. I think the first songs that I learned to cover, the first one was, what's that song? Matchbox 20. I wanna push you around, and I will. I think that's the first song I ever sang with a band. Wow. And then that same band, we went on to. I got the gig actually by covering "Jumper" by Third Eye Blind. That's how I got that gig. And it was like the band was older than me, a year older than me, and I've been watching them like play, and their singer sucked. I'm sorry, Ian Kavanaugh, if you're listening to this, but he was not good. And in my mind, I was jealous, and I always wanted to be in a band. And I was like, totally better than that guy. So I eventually get the chance to do this thanks to Vince Berardinucci, who's a good friend of mine to this day. He was also singing for like another older band and said, you should try out Matt. So that's how I got that gig. And then that same band, we covered Faith by Limp Bizkit. And and we would jam in my guitarist's house in the basement, and he had a bunch of gear. It was like one of the like the first time I walked into a jam room. It was amazing. And we're doing Faith, and I get to the get the fuck up part or whatever, shut the fuck up or whatever the swear word in the middle before the scratch DJ thing comes in. And I say it, and the guitarist stops, and he says, you apologize to my mother. You apologize to my mother on the microphone right now. You apologize. And I had to, and I did.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is
but Two Mountains had a bunch of, it's like our high school didn't have a music program. We did have a really cool play. And shout out to Felicia Cocking, Mrs. Cocking. She's still around. She put on plays with in the high schools for 20, 30 years. Just big numbers considering my school didn't have any budget. It's not like we had an auditorium or anything. It was like in the cafeteria, and they had a stage built. It sounded horribly.
Oh, wow.
And that's one of the places I learned to sing with Mr. Schenk. He was the guy that played the piano, and we'd go at lunchtime. And my first gig was Oliver, and I was an orphan boy.
Nice.
And then it evolved, and finally in 10th grade, which is we have 11 grades here in Montreal. I got like a big part in this like spaghetti western version of the Phantom of the Opera. So
oh wow,
that was fun. I really enjoyed that. And then my 11th grade, when I would have had the big role, there was like a teacher strike, and they weren't allowed to do extracurricular activities. So that didn't happen. There was no big hurrah final play for me. But that whole year, my whole high school class, we organized everything. We put on the talent show. We did everything ourselves without any teacher's help. It was amazing. My band played. It was awesome. Yeah. But supportive that way. A lot of backyard shows, but no metal scene. I really got into metal thanks to Mike Marino, who's the brother of Danny Marino, who's in the Agonist, getting me into 3 Mile Scream and bringing me into the Montreal scene when I grew up at Tantrum, Endast, who was then Inve, Violent Marv, who's moved on to become, my brain's not working tonight. Great Montreal bands, and I had the chance to open for Unearth and God Forbid and Soulfly. Just playing gigs, and that's how I got into metal.
Cool. That's amazing. That's a great story. That's very cool. That's amazing. Wow. Very cool. Let's go at 360 degrees. You have written with your wife 2 children's books.
I collaborated on them. My wife really did all the work with her friend,
Okay.
Jeannie Bond, the illustrator. we have 2 young kids, right? So we don't have much time to have meetings, business meetings. So she's the producer of the podcast. Every decision that's made with the podcast comes from Jessica. Like, I have ideas and I throw them at her, and together we make things work. So we have business meetings walking with our children. So I'd come back from the cabin in the woods when Cryptopsy's writing, when the pandemic started, and she had this idea, I want to write a kid's book. So let's do it. So we're on the walk and we talked out the idea. And that's how that happens. So I'm an early childhood educator. I take care of young children for a living. I've been doing that for the past 15, 16 years of my life. It was the only job that I cared about. I was a camp counselor in Two Mountains for 10 years, I think, something crazy like that, before becoming a trained educator. It was the only job that I ever looked forward to for, I don't know if it was the camaraderie with the other camp counselors. This is not like a sleepaway thing. It's like in the city, like I go to my house and I show up in a local gym and there's kids there. I remember being 16 years old. It was my first job, and I was sitting on the floor with these, I had 6-year-olds. I was 16 with they must have been 8 6-year-olds.
Oh, wow.
I was like, I don't know what the fuck I'm going to do with these kids this summer. I was probably hungover because I like to party. And yeah, so that was the only job that I would finish, and then I'd be happy it was over. And then like throughout the year, I would like long to have this, to work in that industry. So
that's cool.
I started doing that. I started studying in it, and I've been doing it since. So Jessica used my knowledge of early childhood education to create an open-ended book where the book can be used in a different manner, and to construct a book that is good for multi-age groups, yet still being simple enough for very young children. We wanted to talk about, the first book we released is called Today We're Staying Home, obviously about, being confined. Not locking your children up, but because of the pandemic.
Right.
And everything in that book is basically stuff that we did during those early first weeks of the pandemic, making blanket forts in the hall, going for walks, checking out spring that's coming through our windows, singing happy birthday to your cousin on Skype or Zoom because it's his birthday, sending cards to your mother on Mother's Day. And we got it all together like in 3 weeks. It came together very quickly. Jeannie Bond, the illustrator, just killed it. Nice. So good. She's also the person that we hired she created the template for Brutal North America for all the breweries.
Oh,
she didn't do any of the art elements, but she put everything together, like the puzzle of it, the artistic director, I guess you can sort of say. So we always like to keep everything in house, and I have people that I love and I work with, and then we keep them that way. So yeah, the second book was Hidden Rainbow, which is just a continuation of the elements of the pandemic, but to give children an option to express their emotions through art. Being a musician, I know very well that it can be a cathartic experience to express yourself through art. It's a lot easier to sing something, to play something, to get out those emotions rather than to just say them, because sometimes it's hard to do that. So for kids, sometimes they don't even know, right? So we created this book based upon the rainbow movement that was going on during the early days of the pandemic, where kids would draw rainbows and stick them on their windows. We would go outside with our kids on our walks. We live in a condo, so we can't play anywhere but outside. So we would go from rainbow to rainbow. Oh, look, there's another one, to like egg them to walk farther.
Yes.
So it's the rainbow hunt. Hidden Rainbow is what it's called. So it's basically a kid that's exploring their emotions through colors. Very simple book, but kids love it. My child care center has a bunch of these books because they picked them up and supported, because they're awesome.
Great.
And there's groups that are just obsessed with it. They carry it around and they play games with it, like where there's a color and then they have to go get something that's red and orange. They have to like run it, and they love this book. They're obsessed with it. So we have more in store, but it's, Vox&Hops is taking up a lot of space in our life right now. So
that's
Jessica's
very cool.
being nice and adapting herself to help me on my projects at this moment.
I love it. That's such a cool idea. I love that expression. That's one thing that I find fascinating about you is you have a very I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it seems that you have a very strong concept and love of community, and that includes metal community, beer community, artistic community, children, your own community physically where you live, which I think is very cool. And it's something that you hear a lot about, kind of to circle back, Corpse Grinder as being a very wholesome, loving person in an extreme death metal band with horrifying album cover work. Some people, I find it very amusing, but I think that there's a similarity there, I think, between the both of you in a lot of ways, which is very cool.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I think community is important. I think that in a world where you don't even know your neighbors, that scares me.
Yeah.
I was at work and we have like this amazing backyard, and there's these, you can see there's like big hedges, but the kids crawl behind the hedges, and there's people working in their backyard, so they chit chat with them. And some people just work and don't chit chat. Some people like kids. So it's this older lady, and she's living like in a split house, so it's like a house and a house, but they're one building. And the kids go, "Who lives there?" And she goes, "Oh, I don't know." And I was like, "You share a backyard."
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's weird. That scares me.
You share a wall.
Yeah, exactly. So to have like a sense of community that's like in my neighborhood, it's really vibrant right now. We have this alley lifestyle, which I'm very excited once the pandemic's really gone and my kids can just play with all the other kids, and we can just all hang out freely without worrying about masks and all the stupid stuff that we have to worry about. But outside of that, I just having it grow because of the internet, it makes community be very special, which is where Thirsty Thursday become something extremely unique.
Yeah.
To have me go from, I'm going to like hang out with my friends on Zoom on Thursdays. This is what is going to happen, So I invited a bunch of Vox&Hops alumni right when the pandemic hit, and my friends, and we hung out on Zoom on the Thursday. It went like 3-4 hours. We had a lot of fun, drank a lot of beer. And then I was like, let's do another one, but like the next Thursday, like at 2 p.m. so that the European friends can join. That was a lot of fun. And then I was like, what if we like open it up to the public and we just hang out with everyone? And then like, it was like 50 people. It was insane. It was so noisy. And I was like, okay. We're going to have to like narrow this down. What if I do like 2 sessions? And I did that. And I did 2 sessions. You had to like book yourself at a Thirsty Thursday. And then it just opened up and it grew and it grew and it grew and it grew to the point where it's this amazing community. And the amount of people that I've met from around the globe that come to Thirsty Thursdays, like yourself. We've had people from China, people from India, people from New Zealand, people from Australia, people from Mexico. It's crazy. People from the UK. We used to have a guy, shout out to Joshua, he would stay up to hang out with us every week when we were doing it late. He was amazing. And then it came to the point where I was like, okay, well, what if I start like doing mini interviews and sharing this with the community? So I started having guest hosts. My first one was Riley McShane from Allegiant, and he's an amazing host, so that was super fun. And I was at Chris Donaldson's in his studio, and the internet sucked. So thank God Riley was there to run the thing, because me and Chris, we hang out, we enjoy some craft beverages, and it was later in the day.
Nice.
And then I had Ollie, and I had all of Cryptopsy basically, and I just kept going. And then as of September, I basically just host once a month. The first Thursday of every month is when I host a Thirsty Thursday, where I bring on a past guest of the podcast, an alumni, and catch up with them. And then, it's just, I aim for to get a 30-minute episode. So I do 15 minutes of me asking them some questions, and I throw it over to the Thirsty Thursday gang where they get to ask questions, and I record everything, and that becomes a future episode, which drops the following Thursday.
Which is very cool.
It's super fun. I love it. And then I just kept noticing that they kept hanging out, even if I wasn't there. It was amazing. Like, they're doing it right now. Today's Thursday, and there's a Thirsty Thursday happening right now.
Yeah,
I think it's amazing. And the amount of friends that I met there, like Jerry Monk, the metal architect who he was sending me music every day. Matt, you'll like this. And he was right. That's where I discovered Hal. We'll become good friends and members of the Thirsty Thursday gang, and are also a part of Brutal North America.
Yes, very cool.
You know, it's this community. It's amazing. And then, you know, now I have the Metal Review crew, where Whispers from the Void, which is Evan Welch, and De Vitesse, Philip for the Intimates.
Oh, yes.
They review albums for me. And then I also have Dan who does reviews for me. We got Jimbo. And the Metal Architect who does reviews for me. It's insane. I came to the point where there's so much going on in the podcast that I didn't have time to do my albums of the weeks anymore. So I wanted to outsource and to include as many people and to showcase as many people as possible. So none of that would have been possible without Thirsty Thursday. It's like we've done a bachelor party on Thirsty Thursday. We've done New Year's Eve on Thirsty Thursday.
Yes. And it's really fun. It's great. I mean, I've only participated a few times, but it's been amazing. I've become friends with people because of it, multiple people. So yeah, if I would, you know, it's a great community. It's very friendly. Everybody's really nice. And it's
super respectful.
Really respectful.
Extreme values of what is acceptable and what isn't.
Yeah, and just
and
talk metal and
uphold
beer,
that.
and it's really, really fun to just chat on there. And yeah, I mean, there was one night, God, I was on there until like, I don't know, 3 a.m, I think. And there were like 3 of us left, and I don't know.
After party. That's what. Yeah, I know. That's why I started doing that too, because I would say goodbye, and then I would see them all hanging out in weird separate Zooms, because they're still doing these screenshots, and I'm like,
yeah,
what if I'm not there, but I do an after party and ask someone to host it, and it worked. It's crazy. And I know that when the world opens up and I go on tour, I'm going to go through, you know, Boston. Evan Welch is going to be there. We're going to go to dinner. We're going to drink some beers. He's going to come backstage at the show. We're going to continue having fun. I know that people are going to be traveling to see each other. Like Jerry Monk can't wait to come to Montreal as soon as he can. And I know it's going to happen. It's amazing. It's this sense of community that I could have never paid any specialist to create. You know, it had to happen the way it happened. It had to happen organically and naturally. If not, it wouldn't be true.
Yeah, I was going to say it's very organic. It's really a wonderful, like you said, it's a wonderful community of metalheads and craft beer drinkers, and it's really fun to chat with people. And yeah, it's especially in this kind of lockdown. I think it's there's just some really good, honest, you know, wonderful people in that community, and it's a great place to go. It's good support system. They're funny, they're caring. It's great. I would say anybody that wants to join should definitely check it out, unless you're an asshole. Then don't.
We smell them out rather quickly.
Yeah. It's been great. I've really enjoyed it. I probably shot my mouth off a few times after a few beers, but you know,
that's what friends are for. It's basically like it's become the local pub.
Yeah.
Each Thursday you walk down to the local pub and then you hang out with your friends. You accept your friends are from all across the globe.
It's brilliant. It's great. Well, I don't want to keep you all night. I know it's getting late there. I just have one last question, and it's especially for you. It's probably a loaded question because of the beer and the metal scene. But so as you know, my blog is Brews and Tunes. I pair heavy metal albums with craft beer. So it's a Thursday night. If you're, you know, hopefully the kids are in bed, you're able to chill for a little while, relax a little bit. What is your go-to beer, and what is your go-to album to pair with that beer, if you have one? Or what would you pair right now if you could?
I think that's easier for me because there's so many beers going on.
Yeah.
I'm still really hyped on this album, and I've so much so that I hit them up to come onto the podcast, and it's Dune, except the U is a V.
Oh, okay.
They're from the UK. They're from Glasgow. Oh, I can't remember the name of the album. I'm sorry. And I would pair it with this beer right here because I think it works. And It's a black IPA.
Nice.
Or I could do the really easy answer and do, I would link this with the Black Album from the unforenamed band.
There you go. Right.
I tried to do that. I did it when I was doing my beers of the week. I tried to pair. Someone's like, you should pair albums with them, and I had such a hard time for some reason. I don't know why. It's just not something that where my brain it doesn't connect that way. It's like it's really heavy. It has to be a stout. That was like I felt I was too Neanderthal about the music and beer pairing. But I'm really about that album, Dune.
Cool. I need to check that out. Yeah, I have a system, but I break the rules constantly with my system. So I've been doing this. I've been doing the beer pairing. This coming year will be my 10th year of doing this. It's ridiculous. But so I do have a bit of a system. Like I have certain styles of beers that I think go better with certain styles of metal or subgenres of metal. However, I break the rules all the time, especially if, name association. There's just certain things like, well, I have to pair it with this because of this, because of the name. Even though if I was the designer, if I had designed that beer, I'm like, you want to do something, it's a thrash metal band. You should do like a pale ale or an IPA, something that's bitter and hoppy, but you can still slam it because it's fucking thrash metal.
I picture a thrash metal me would be like something super light, super fresh. Like we have thrashed the Chris Soutsos, who used to be a part of J-Hoff Films, YouTube star. He's a part of Brew North America with Henderson Brewing Co. for his new brand called Thrashed. And he's doing it's a light smoked Grazzi. So nice. It's just like a crusher. That's what I see thrash music as.
No, that works. Yeah. No, in fact, and like I said, I break the rules all the time. My very loose rules, to the point that my wife bought me some socks that say, I'll admit it, I just make shit up.
That's all we do. That's all we do.
Yeah. I'm an English.
An album that I am really looking forward to, and I rarely listen to singles, and I don't like to listen to singles because it ruins the album experience for me.
Yeah.
And I almost listened to it yesterday and I didn't. Is the new Ammon Ra that's coming. I'm so excited.
Yeah.
And that I would pair with something dark, heavy.
Yeah, like a imperialist Russian stout.
But like as high as possible from a Droid Theory or something.
Yeah.
And it has to be sipped because the album is so.
Yeah, maybe
I'm excited for that.
Have you ever had the Tweak from Avery out of Colorado?
I've had some Avery, but not the Tweak.
It's 7.5% plus ABV, so you have to sip it or you'll pass out. It's brutal.
Amazing.
That would be a good one. This is black as death. That it's great. It's great. Anyway, sorry, I don't want to keep you all night. This was fantastic chatting with you, Matt. I will be so everybody watching, there'll be links in the description, links to Cryptopsy, as well as Vox&Hops, and definitely look out for if you're in Canada, North America, look out for the Brutal. There's going to be lots of cool beers coming out with various bands, your favorite bands, my favorite bands out there. It's going to be amazing. So please check it out. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure, my friend. Cheers.
Thank you. Cheers to you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.